Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having an amazing day today. Today, I thought it would be fun for me to do my review of Evil Genius, the original game from 2004. It's one of my favorite games of all times. It's probably a little bit of a cult classic today, although it did sell well enough at the time for the studio that made them to work on a sequel, so that was good too. That fell through when the studio went out. And then it was purchased by Rebellion, and Rebellion made a sequel recently in the last couple of years. For you folks, it's not that great. It's okay. It's not the best thing in the world. It's not the worst thing in the world. The DLC really hurts it, in my opinion. So this video game was published in 28th in 2004. It's made by Elixir Studios, and this is their big one. They also released another game too, and those were the two. And it was distributed by Sierra, purchased by Rebellion. So they're the ones that have it online right now. This is a James Bond-esque inspired base builder. Save that you are the big bad, the evil bad guy, the evil genius, so to speak, and you are getting invaded by the good guys. Kind of like the dungeon keeper in that concept. And so because those are both base building, where you're building like traps and stuff like that, and they're coming into invade you, lots of people consider them to be the same genre of a game, but they don't play the same. I would not consider them anywhere near the same stuff. Just heads up. So this is real time. You can send out missions on a world map called Acts of Infamy for you folks. Now basically, you have a world map like I mentioned before, where you send folks out to, and then you basically have three options. The first is the plot. That's where you send your minions out and you try to come up with ideas for getting acts of infamy. The second are to just steal and get that cash. The warrior people are better at the stealing of the warrior cash and so forth. And some places are better to get cash than others, but will have higher heat for sending people there. And the brain people are better at plotting. And then the social minions are better at hiding up your heat and covering your heat and that sort of a thing and such. And then ideally what you'll want to do for acts of infamy, even ones that don't require it, is to have each of those three out there for you folks, and then have more too, so that way when they happen, you can have some special people in there, because you'll lose some people as acts of infamy start, and then you want to keep up with your stuff and make sure it succeeds, so you don't lose a bunch of people, so you want to send in some more people. And then on Acts of Infamy, the brain people make it faster. A few brain people can like have a longer one. And then the heat from the social minions will drop, and then your veteran, your military minions will help you with staying alive, because agents will show up on the screen as you've been in a place for more and more heat. And the last thing you can do is hide from them. Or you just come home, it's pretty fast too, or go to another place. I can do that too. Alright, so this has a Steam rating, 94% happy. That's great stuff, love it lots. Strong stuff. Metacritic is 75%. It's great there too. It's going for $9.99 on Steam and on Great Old Games. I have it for GOG on GOG. You need to launch it from it's a launcher. I tried to launch it last night after playing about 2 or 3 hours, and then come back to it afterwards. And I tried to launch it just from my like thing, and it wouldn't launch. It would get open and it would say it's the wrong setting and so forth, because it's using DOSBox, because it's a DOS game. So you need to use, but I don't know about Steam. So you need to launch it from the launcher if you buy it, or use it on GOG. Just heads up. So you can choose one of 3 evil geniuses to choose from, each with their own henchmen, and they each have their own unique abilities. Some are much better to inspire your minions than others. The base one, so I would say the best for your first playthrough is Maximilian, who has the best henchmen in Jubai. Jubai can teleport to other locations on the map and then eviscerate and kill people in one hit. He's great. Alexa starts, who I'm started with again after putting like an hour and a half into the game last night. She starts with Eli Barracuda, who has a strong ranged gun, and most of the henchmen are melee, so it's nice to have a ranged one out there too. And he's pretty good on the map too. And Shen Yu has a Lord Kane, a powerful socially minded henchmen, which many fans love. I prefer Jubai. So if you're going to start off fresh, do Jubai. So you need to hire minions where you can have up to 100 and so forth. And then you assign them and train them into the 3 that I talked about earlier. Back to them. Those are social, military, and science types of various levels at each. You'll start, for example, with a valet. Then the science ones are the ones who fix your stuff, like technicians, or they'll do repairs, and they'll also do research on things, and they'll also check around your lair to see if something can be researched, that sort of thing. The military ones are the best at fighting, and the social ones are best at distracting people, and so forth. All of the things, you have about 5 different stats from intelligence to loyalty that your minions have. So you want to maximize those as much as possible. They'll drain over time. And as you're using it, they'll drain more. So that's good stuff. Also, you need to change. You can change when you on the first screen how many minions you have. You'll start with 3 minions of workers. But you only have a cap of 3. So as you add more in the barracks, you'll need to go in and change the cap. What I just go ahead and set it to 99, which is the highest you can give anything, although you can have 100. And then it'll just automatically build it. And then you choose how fast you're going to bring them in. The automatic, the base one, is 1 every minute, but you don't pay any money. And the faster you bring them in, the more money you'll spend. So, for example, we spend 500 cash to bring them in every 40 seconds instead of every minute. Stuff like that. I'll increase it up fairly decently, especially since I'm going to talk to you about a little bit of a cash sheet here a little bit later, and that sort of thing. So then you can build a number of rooms, like barracks for them to sleep, and also lockers, so just how many minions you have. A research room, a training room, that's very important. Security rooms, a kitchen, for them, the hangout spot, your control room, which is just where you need to have them to send out missions, a pharmacy, and a reactor room that gives you power for your plant, then archives, and then a freezer for body bags and stuff like that. And then a place for your gold to store, and a storeroom, and then your retreat that you go to. So those are all the basic rooms that you can have, and so forth. Each of those has their own stuff and has their own levels of heat and that sort of thing. So you have a small number of henchmen, like I mentioned before when I talked about your stars. You start with, and then you can directly command them and your person too for your folks. And you can get more over time as your infamy rises, but you cannot control your minions. It's just yourself and your henches. Henchmen can come back after dying, will get sent to the infirmary after dying, unless they die to a super enemy 3 times. And then there are 5 alliances that control the world into 5 different districts, each of which has different levels of danger and heat and better stuff for wealth if you're stealing that money. And those sorts of things. There are 5 alliances that control the world, and and each of them you'll have a different heat meter with, and that sort of a thing. So you need to drop heat by doing things on a map. You'll add to that heat if you do things on the map or have your people on the map, like in the acts of infamy, like just stealing, plotting, or running missions. And then as heat rises with one of these, they'll send more powerful and more leveled up things against you. Like early on, you might get investigators and such like that, but then you'll get to like saboteurs or thieves if you've stolen stuff. And then up to veterans and military if you really annoyed them and have high heat levels. Those sorts of things. And then they're kind of like Smash or Hammer, and there are 5 of them. And the game of 25 spaces. So you'll need to, heat will drop over time, so you just need to give it time, and that sort of thing. So you will get a notoriety meter early on, right at the beginning as it rises. You can unlock, like I mentioned earlier, better missions and more henchmen, and that sort of a thing. So that's great too. But you'll also unlock bad things. Like, for example, each of the 5 alliances have a super soldier of each of them, which are of these 5 foes. They're unique. They're very, very powerful, and it's hard to run up against them. There's one that's based on a James Bond. There's one that's based on Jet Li and Jackie Chan. There's one that's based on the guy Sylvester Stallone's character, Rambo from the American Alliance and that sort of a thing. They're nasty. They're very difficult to deal with at the end. But on the second island, there are ways to get rid of 4 of them, but you just can't get rid of James Bond. You can also steal stuff from the world map in Acts of Infamy to add to your base or research it and that sort of a thing. Or you can just make your guys happy and restore stats. Love doing that. On your island, as he grows, more, like I mentioned before, more powerful will arrive, and higher level ones too. So you can build traps, like I mentioned earlier, and try to capture or kill the bad guys in traps. I prefer distraction ones that are drain their smarts. So they'll just be looking around and such, and then they'll go back confused rather than dying and raising the heat level less, but to a lesser degree than if they'd gone back with heat stuff. Some items on the map have what is called heat, like body bags. Right, and the cooler that they go in, I'm sorry, the freezer really, that they go into, things like that. But some things don't. Barracks, lockers, or so. Right, and so you definitely want to make sure you're managing your heat and don't put heat things in the early parts of your base entrance because then people will be like, oh no, that's all the stuff, right? So there are 2 major issues with this game for you folks. The first is that, like I mentioned before, that a lot of reviewers have, you cannot control the minions. You can only control your henchmen, and you can only control yourself. Now, I think that's actually not a flaw, like a lot of reviewers think. I think it's actually a benefit of the game because it is annoying. You're right that you can only control your henchmen and yourself like an evil genius could. But that would be exactly realistic to life, right? And there are a couple of ways that you can get around that. First of all, you can go out there and actually tell them what you want to build or work on now. You can actually go out there, like, so for example, if your power plant runs out of energy and you need to build another reactor, you can just go to the power plant room and say, you can build a reactor and then stand next to it and say, this is the priority, and they'll do that first. Secondly, you can kill your minions in order to inspire them for a short period of time, too, just like you would just like you would James Bond, right, and that sort of thing. So it does feel like a very realistic thing. Yeah. The game-wise, it might be a little thing. Now, another thing that I will absolutely give is that this does not have a fast forward button. Like you can't go to the seconds 2 or full 4 speeds, which I would love to have. Can't speed this game up at all. That is a major issue to my mind, and so forth. So anyways, it's got great flavor. The soundtrack is amazing. It's my favorite one of my favorite soundtracks of all time in video games. I bought it on iTunes and regularly listen to it. Love it lots. It's incredibly strong and such. Love it a lot. It's the flavor of this Bond-esque, absolutely up and down the blocks. Love it lots too. So there's great flavor everywhere. Like I mentioned before, and one of my favorite games too. I would give it an 11 out of 10 if I could, but I can't because it's a video game that should be getting a 10 out of 10, and so forth. So it's a 10 out of 10 for you folks. Now, like I mentioned before, there is a well-known way to get that cash early on in the game. So start the game, build your base, and then get to a place where it says capture a maid, and then interrogate her. And when you can capture that maid and interrogate her, you can then turn into a valet, that person, and then you'll get the training room unlocked. When that happens on the screen, will appear soldiers, and people will start arriving at your island. So that's sort of the end of the prologue, if you will. So ideally, if you can just send out your agents, what I do is I send one to every place in the 20 places that I'm not draining cash to spy on them in order to build up the plotting elements and such. And then I will do the drainings. I have 15 people in each of the 5 best places, one in each alliance, like the Middle East, for example, and I can smash. And then you will get that money and so forth, but then we'll get the build up that plot. So what I do, after a few hours, typically they recommend it overnight, and so forth. So typically what I would do is come back after a couple hours, move everybody back from those areas into from stealing to plotting. Come back after half an hour, 40 minutes. So you'll plot out all those things. And then before that happens, there are a few missions you can do. The first is an archives mission that gives you the libraries that I mentioned earlier. In the Western US, I would do that and build those too early while you're sending out your minions. Building up your base, and you need to build up enough people to have 100 henchmen too. And then I would also build up your you can also get 2 stealing things. One is from Cuba. It's called El Presidente's painting, which just requires the construction workers that you start with, but a lot of them. And then another one in East Asia is stealing a Ming vase, which also is just construction. I would also do those too. While rating, you can scan, and use that to slow down your stuff. And then after you've pulled off all your guys from the map, after you've done plotting, after about a half an hour, 45 minutes of plotting in those areas, then let it sit for another hour or such, and then I would come back to it. So that way, all of your people are done with it. So I just did it last night, and I finished with like $6.5 million and such, and had a lot of plots done. So if we're just there you are. So have you played Evil Genius? And if so, what did you think about it? Did you agree or disagree with my 10 out of 10? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. I try to do a review of each of these of older video games on Wednesdays for you folks for this channel. I've done recently. I just did Star Control 2 from 92, which is about 12 years before this one. And I actually really just finished playing that game. I went back and replayed it and so forth yesterday too during the day. And then I wrote up my Evil Genius mode after I finished playing some Battletech around like 11:45. And then I started playing this and put a couple hours into it last night, building up my base and all the things. And then as missions and such, like I mentioned earlier. I built up my base, have 100 slots, although I can only have 99 construction works. That's the max you can have in any of them. So there you are. So if you like this, so I definitely was in the mood. I love this game so much. It's an absolute classic. I think it's got a lot of respect from fans these days. And like you saw, it was in the 90s on Steam. So there you are. So if you like this, and check it out. Some of my previous video games too, like Star Control 2. Other stuff like that too. And then you can also, if you like this, hit the subscribe button. I do one of these every week. And then I also do, and then the like button too. Watch my videos and then hit the bell icon if you're feeling frisky. I also have 3 videos a week of older things in the science fiction, fantasy, and horror genres. Yesterday was that H.P. Lovecraft short story called Nyarlathotep. Tomorrow will be a game book from a post-apocalyptic sci-fi world, and then Sunday was in a Michael Moorcock short story in the fantasy genre. So fantasy, and then horror yesterday, and then science fiction tomorrow. Right? So you get all 3 of those. All those older works. It's decades ago, or something says a century ago. Love it lots. Also, I do Saturdays. I do Serial Saturday for you folks, where I take off some time. I'll be doing Planet of the Giants from the 2nd season of the Doctor Who, black and white. On Fridays, I like to do a collection of top 10s. And then on Mondays, I like to do reviews of older things in the D&D or Battletech worlds. I did a review of L1, Secret of Bone Hill from 1981, a module in first edition Dungeons & Dragons set in Greyhawk Call. So that was pretty fun too. So if you like that stuff and older things too in that areas, you'll definitely like that a lot. That's also where the name of this channel comes from, and which is The Worst Thing About New Books. It's a quote by a French philosopher named Jean Joubert, who said the worst thing about them was that they kept us from reading the old ones, right? This is really some older stuff. That's the passion of the show, finding these other things. And finally, I just want to thank you so very, very much for taking some time out of your day and investing in watching my videos, right? Because we all have so many things that are happening, right, in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me, that's incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it so very, very much. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.